In 1986, the FBI was deeply concerned when two of its most important Soviet agents, KGB agents Valery Martinov and Sergei Motorin, were suddenly exposed. They were lured to Moscow and executed. What better way to uncover a spy than to turn to the Soviet Analysis Unit, a department created to counter the relentless espionage of the Cold War? Robert Hanssen, the unit's 44-year-old supervisor, was tasked with capturing the spy. What the FBI didn't realize was that the spy they were hunting was Hanssen himself. This was classic spying. He would leave his home in the Vienna, Virginia suburb of Washington, D.C., and drive the short distance to nearby Foxstone Park, about a 3-minute drive away. He would walk to a pedestrian bridge within the park and place a plastic garbage bag containing top-secret documents or floppy disks. He would leave a vertical strip on a sign at the park's entrance, making it visible to a passing Russian agent looking for the signal. The agent then collects the files, hands over the money, and places a horizontal bar on the sign itself to confirm the exchange. Over the course of 22 years, Robert Hanssen spied for the Soviet Union, and then Russia after its collapse. He handed over more than 6,000 pages of classified documents containing the agency's greatest secrets, sending Soviet spies who agreed to work for America to their deaths in exchange for $600,000 in cash and diamonds. His 88-year-old mother was shocked when she learned of his arrest. She said he had a happy childhood, but in reality his childhood was anything but happy. His father, a police officer, physically and psychologically abused him. He would wrap him in a rug or army mattress, immobilizing his arms so he could not move. He would spin him until he felt so dizzy he would vomit, claiming it was to strengthen him. As a teenager, his father secretly arranged for him to fail his driving test, further undermining his self-confidence. On his wedding day, his father told his bride, Bonnie, that she was marrying a loser. After studying accounting and earning an MBA from Northwestern University, Robert followed in his father's footsteps and joined the Chicago Police Department in 1972. He was assigned to a unit investigating police corruption, his first foray into intelligence. 3 years later, in January 1976, he left to pursue a new path, being sworn in as a special agent with the FBI. Although he had never been a field agent, Hanssen held various positions, including white-collar crimes and accounting in the New York Criminal Division. In March 1979, he landed the role he had always coveted: counterintelligence. He was responsible for building national databases to track Soviet agents, compiling comprehensive profiles of KGB and GRU spies. Shortly after his transfer to this division, he began spying for the Soviets. The Soviets didn't contact him. Instead, he entered the Manhattan office of the Soviet trade agency Armtorg, which served as a front for the Soviet Military Intelligence Service. He quickly exposed the identity of the most important American agent within the Soviet Military Intelligence Service, Dmitry Polyakov, codenamed Tovat. For 17 years, Polyakov had been passing secrets to the United States, including vital intelligence on Soviet strategic missiles and nuclear strategy. Despite Hanssen's betrayal, Russian intelligence took no immediate action based on his information. Polyakov wasn't arrested until 6 years later, when CIA agent Aldrich Ames also exposed him. However, the Soviets later took his information seriously. By 1981, he had moved to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. to work in the Intelligence Division's budget unit. This position gave him insight into all FBI intelligence and counterintelligence operations, including how resources were allocated. He worked to develop and improve surveillance tools, becoming an expert on lie detectors and even convincing the FBI not to expand their use, which later secured him protection. He was valued for his computer skills, but not for his social skills. In David Wise's book, Spy, about the betrayal of Robert Hanssen, a former colleague described him as someone who lived in the shadows. He was the last person in the world to say, "Let's have a drink together." 2 years later, in 1983, he transferred to the FBI's Soviet Analysis Unit. As a supervisory special agent, he studied the espionage activities of KGB and GRU agents in the United States. The FBI and CIA had recently recruited two important agents. Lieutenant Colonel Valery Martinov joined the Soviet embassy in Washington in 1980. He later agreed to work as a double agent for the United States. His motivation was not just money, but also his passion for espionage and his belief that America was not the enemy. Around the same time, the FBI and CIA also recruited another KGB officer, Sergei Motorin. They exploited his personal problems, his wife's infidelity with a prostitute, to gain his cooperation. Motorin provided valuable intelligence, including a comprehensive list of all KGB agents at the Soviet embassy. To protect the double agents, the FBI assigned them code names, but it wasn't long before Hanssen, who was privy to their interrogations, discovered their true identities. Hanssen also revealed the identity of another KGB officer turned American agent, Boris Yuzhin. The Soviets were already suspicious of Yuzhin when a janitor found a spy camera disguised as a cigarette lighter at the Soviet consulate in San Francisco. Because Yuzhin was a smoker, the KGB assumed it was Yuzhin's camera, and they were right. In 1985, Hanssen wrote to the head of the KGB counterintelligence department at the Soviet embassy. "Dear Mr. Cherkashin, I will soon send Mr. Degtyar a box full of documents. They are from some of the most sensitive and complex projects of the US intelligence services. I believe they are sufficient to justify a payment of $100,000. I warn you that Mr. Boris Yuzhin, Mr. Sergei Motorin, and Mr. Valery Martinov have been recruited by our special services." Unbeknownst to Hanssen, CIA spy Aldrich Ames had revealed the identities of the three men 4 months earlier. However, Hanssen's letter served as a double confirmation to the Soviets, strengthening the credibility of the information. Motorin and Martinov were executed. Yuzhin was sentenced to a labor camp. Hanssen then sent instructions to the KGB. The KGB discussed how to pay him and how to communicate with them in the future using checkpoints in parks and pieces of tape on road signs as signals. Robert Hanssen was full of contradictions. By day, he worked tirelessly to protect America from Soviet espionage, even devising software to help the FBI more efficiently track the movements of Soviet diplomats and personnel. By night, he confided America's most sensitive secrets to the Russians, whom he labeled godless, an irony for a devout Catholic who attended church almost daily and spent Sundays there with his wife and 6 children. He is said to have confessed his espionage activities to a priest, knowing that the sanctity of confession would protect him. Yet he continued to sin. In 1988, he turned over more than 530 pages of documents, such as a study by. The FBI's investigation into the Soviet Union's penetration of the bureau he personally ran revealed the identities of Soviets the agency had attempted to recruit. When Moscow wanted to know how much the Americans knew about Soviet missile capabilities, it turned to Hanssen, who provided a detailed assessment. One of his most notorious betrayals came in September 1989, when he revealed a secret FBI and NSA operation. A tunnel built beneath the new Soviet embassy in Washington, allowing the United States to eavesdrop on Soviet communications. The FBI purchased a nearby house that served as the entrance to the tunnel, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars to dig, and was ultimately rendered useless by Hanssen's betrayal. Author David Wise astutely observed, "Perhaps it was fitting that the spy tunnel was discovered by a mole, a creature that burrows underground. The KGB was grateful for his information. Although they didn't know his identity, as Hanssen never revealed it, they knew he craved recognition and praised him in letters. For example, "Sir, we thank you again for your wonderful sense of humour and sharp wit. We greatly appreciate both." After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Hanssen temporarily severed contact with his KGB handlers. The turmoil in the region seemed to reflect Hanssen's increasingly erratic behaviour. In 1993, he physically assaulted his subordinate, Kimberly Lichtenberg, pulling her arm and yelling at her for leaving a meeting early. The incident resulted in serious arm injuries, and Hanssen was suspended for only 5 days. He also attempted to contact a Russian military intelligence officer in the garage of his apartment building with information about American double agents. This alarmed the intelligence officer, who believed it was a trap, and filed a complaint with the US State Department. Despite his erratic behavior, He was never suspected of being a spy, but that would change. The 1994 arrest of Aldrich Ames, the CIA officer accused of spying for the Soviets, did not explain the massive losses suffered by American intelligence. The FBI and CIA believed there must be another spy. The Felix Bloch case fueled this speculation. Bloch was a US State Department official suspected of selling secrets to the Soviets. While stationed in Vienna, he began dating prostitutes frequently, a sum his Foreign Service salary was insufficient to cover. In 1989, Hanssen informed the KGB that Bloch was under surveillance. The KGB agent, who had been meeting with Bloch, abruptly broke off contact, saying in a phone call secretly recorded by the FBI, "He is suspected of having a contagious disease." The sudden break with the Soviets alarmed the FBI. Because Ames had no access to the FBI's investigation into Bloch, someone else must have informed the KGB. Even when the manhunt led to the arrest of FBI agent Earl Edwin Bates, who was spying for the Russians, there were individuals within the agency who suspected another spy. Special Agent Thomas Kimmel remained convinced that there was another spy because the Russians had not requested much information from Bates. Furthermore, Bates had no knowledge of the tunnel under the Russian embassy. The FBI and CIA began targeting former KGB officers, now known as SVR officers after the collapse of the Soviet Union, who had worked in the United States during the years when America was losing some of its best assets. They offered up to $1 million for information, but failed to find any significant leads. The investigation misidentified the CIA officer, Brian Kelly, leading him into 2 years of hell and uncertainty as murder charges loomed. The real culprit wasn't identified until 2000. The surprise came when the FBI focused on a retired KGB officer who had worked in Washington and was now in private business in Moscow. To lure him out of Russia, the FBI partnered with an American company to invite him to a fake business meeting in New York. During the meeting, the KGB officer, whose identity remains unknown, revealed that he had kept a copy of the KGB file on the spy as collateral for his retirement. The FBI agreed to pay him $7 million in exchange for his secrets. Although the file did not include the name of the American spy because Hanssen never revealed his identity, it contained a treasure trove of information. Among the evidence was a recorded conversation between a KGB agent and the person sitting there. When FBI counterintelligence agent Michael Wagsback listened to the recording, he recognized the voice, but could not immediately identify it. Another clue came from the file's reference to a quote attributed to legendary US General George Patton, "Let's get this over with so we can crush those grumbling Japanese." Bob King, an FBI analyst who had previously worked with Hanssen, recalled him using the term grumbling and saying, "I think that's Bob Hanssen." Wagsback listened again, and this time made the connection, exclaiming, "Oh my God, that's him!" The most significant piece of evidence in the spy's case was a black plastic garbage bag Hanssen had used to store classified documents. His fingerprints were found on the inside layer. The FBI now had damning evidence against Hanssen, but catching him in the act would be crucial to his conviction. They set an elaborate trap for Hanssen. They offered him a fake promotion to the Senior Executive Service, an exclusive class of federal government positions with higher salaries. Hanssen accepted, and in January 2001 he moved into a small office on the 9th floor of FBI headquarters. The bureau was secretly equipped with hidden cameras and microphones, and his work and home phones were tapped. To constantly monitor his movements, the FBI purchased a house across from Hanssen's Virginia home. Hanssen was also assigned an assistant, Eric O'Neill, who was tasked with monitoring him. By February 2001, more than 300 agents were involved in the investigation, tracking Hanssen from the moment he left his home until he returned. When the FBI secretly searched his car, they found nails and chalk in the glove box, possibly used to identify Russian agents. Hanssen began to suspect something was up because he hadn't been assigned any meaningful work despite his alleged promotion. He also no longer had access to any top-secret information. Out of caution, he wrote to the SVR, informing them that he would remain incognito for the time being. "Dear friends, thank you for your help all these years. However, it appears that my greatest benefit has ended, and it is time for me to leave active duty. I believe I have detected recurring emissions of intermittent radio signals from my vehicle. Something has awakened the sleeping tiger. I will contact you next year, same time and place. Your friend, Ramon Garcia, one of the aliases he used. The FBI learned that Hanssen was planning to drop off a package at Foxstone Park on February 18, 2001, based on a letter he had sent the previous year to the SVR specifying that the location would be used once a year. That day, he arrived at the park at 4:34 p.m., leaving classified materials at the pedestrian bridge as usual. When he returned to his car, minutes later, FBI agents, some carrying automatic weapons, surrounded him. While detaining him, one of the agents, Doug Gregory, told him, "Bob, this is a sad day for all of us." "Life is full of ups and downs," Hanssen replied. On July 6, 2001, Robert Hanssen pleaded guilty to 15 counts of espionage. Before his sentencing, he read a court note. "I apologize for my behavior. I am ashamed of it. I opened the door to public shaming for my completely innocent wife and children. I hurt so many deeply." He betrayed his wife, Bonnie, by continuing to leak secrets to the Russians after she caught him once, promising to stop. Then he betrayed her in a very personal way. Unbeknownst to her, he encouraged his close friend, retired Army officer Jack Hoschauer, to secretly watch them having sex. He even planned to drug Bonnie so his friend could impregnate her, according to David Wise's book. When the truth finally came out, a distraught Bonnie reportedly told her sister, "My husband is a traitor and a pervert." Robert Hanssen spent the rest of his life in a maximum security prison in Colorado without the possibility of parole. On June 5, 2023, he was found dead in his cell at the age of 79. The cause of death was colon cancer. Why did he do what he did? What was his motivation? According to Dr. David Charney, the psychiatrist hired by Hanssen's defense team, Hanssen was motivated in part by a desire to prove his worth to his wife, using money to assuage his sense of failure. Dr. Charney told author David Wise, "Men are burdened by male pride. If our wives think we're failures, it's unbearable. But money alone doesn't explain everything." Hanssen himself acknowledged this in a letter to the KGB. "As far as money is concerned, I don't need or use more than $100,000. Dr. Charney believes that Hanssen's primary motivation for spying stemmed from a deep-seated anger toward his father. Anger so intense that Hanssen described it as letting it out of the bottle when he spied. As Dr. Charney explains, his troubled relationship with his father would shape his thinking for the rest of his life.